DofE was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. It really pushed me to my limits, for not only was I being mentally and physically tested, but I was doing it with a group of people that I barely met before and didn't know. Completing my gold expedition is one of my highlights of my school career. It took place the day after my graduation, meaning that I missed my after party, but I gained something far more rewarding from it, and in the ridiculous heat I learned a lot about myself. I'm going to give a brief synopsis of each day, followed by a discussion of the Peak District itself, the importance of teamwork, and what I learned about myself as well on the trip. Also, whilst at times I will highlight how hard the expedition was, it wasn't all doom and gloom, we did have fun. So, something about me which is slightly ironic considering I actively did DofE is that I hate hiking. I always have done, always will. Not to mention that I walk rather strangely, therefore getting used to hiking in boots with a massive backpack, combined with taking the tent on the first day, meant that the first day was a massive shock to the system. I also ended up carrying a much heavier backpack than initially intended when I planned for the trip, as it transpired that my special food, which you only needed to add water to make delicious, nutritious food, which was incredibly light we bought from Asda, was actually not nutritious, nor would it provide energy. So I ended up carrying massive bags of pasta, which definitely did not help the heaviness of my rucksack. Furthermore, whilst the first day was a test of physical strength, it was also a mental one. I played hockey with Jemima, one of my teammates, but as she was the year below, we hadn't really talked much, and both Mimi and Matt were people who I hadn't really spoken to before. And these were people who I was going to be spending the next 4 days with. So the first day was really about getting to know each other and getting to know the team's strengths and weaknesses. It was a tough day, and we ended up being out on the mountains for much longer than initially anticipated. Confidence in our abilities to navigate was definitely something that we needed to learn as a team, as we kept being really indecisive when we came to crossroads, as we didn't know whether we were going the right way or whether we were in the right place. The day, however, came to a really dramatic conclusion, with Mimi and I helping Mountain Rescue find a woman who had gone onto the mountains to commit suicide. They managed to find her with our help, and if they hadn't had our help, then they might not have found her, so we actually ended up saving someone's life. So in that respect, the first night ended on a bit of a high, bar from one thing. So the Peak District is really notorious for having bugs everywhere, and we were really good as a team. We sprayed everyone, and it was really good. But what I was an idiot and didn't realise was that after I'd taken my boots off, I didn't spray my feet, and I was wearing flip-flops, and I got really bad bites all across my feet, which was just absolutely horrific to walk with for the next 3 days. So moving on to day 2, the second day of DofE is always a bit of a struggle. You ache so much from the previous day, and the end seems nowhere near in sight. What didn't help was that not only were my feet killing from the insect bites, but I also managed to dislocate my shoulder right at the beginning of the day. Dislocating my shoulder is a bit of a common occurrence for me, so there was no extreme precaution that needed to be taken, but it was definitely a bit of a pain and was a bit of a physical setback, as it meant I had to start taking Nurofen every couple of hours. This is probably the day where we actually got the most lost. We ended up on the most hideous moorland, and it just stretched endlessly in front of us. It was a bit misty, and basically we should have taken a compass bearing when we got onto the top, as we were following this really this footpath, and we were following it, and we didn't take the compass bearing because we didn't think there was any need to, and naturally we lost sight of the path, so we ended up just walking across this moorland with no clue where we were going, just hoping we could see the end. Yeah, and basically everybody got quite down, as this should only have taken a couple of hours, and we ended up walking on this moorland for about 4 or 5 hours, and this impacted both morale and what time we got back to camp. And it was such a low point for the team, and Jemima and Mimi were really look, we want to quit, we don't want to do this anymore, and I think this was the point where I really came in on my own on the expedition, because I tried to be the reasonable person of the group, and I was like, guys, even if we do call Mr. Gathers and get him to come and rescue us, we're still going to have to get off this moorland. We still have these rucksacks. There's no way we can get them off us. We still have to get across this. We might as well get across it by ourselves and be able to continue the expedition, rather than ask for help, find that we actually aren't that far from the end, and we've ended up having to end the expedition. And I managed to really get up the morale for the rest of the team, and it worked, luckily. And we found a way off the moorland. And after a 12-hour day of hiking, we ended it on a bit of a high with Mr. Gaddis coming into the camp with his dog, Sid. And honestly, Sid is like the cutest thing you've ever seen in your life, and it just made the day so much better. So moving on to day 3, I personally think that mentally day 3 is the worst, because the end doesn't seem in sight and you've just spent 2 days hiking sluggishly across moorland and up mountains. And this really was quite a low and hard struggle to get through mentally as a team. And it was at this point where we really bonded, as we took turns to navigate, to recount stories and to sing loudly. And at the end of the day, we were all like posing and taking pictures by all these like nice flowers and everything. It was just really nice. In the morning, we basically spent all morning climbing up the most hideous vertical mountain, and it was like so rocky and I kept falling over, and we had to keep taking stops as well because it was quite hot and it was just this awful pressure. But after we did that, we actually had a really enjoyable walk across the top of the mountains. We could see from the top all the different glacial landforms, and it really was quite spectacular. Definite highlight of the day came at about 3 o'clock, which we had as lunchtime, where Mr. Gaddis and Sid, the puppy, arrived to check in on us, and everyone went crazy about the dog. And not Mr. Gaddis. Sorry. No, we did. We were very excited to see Sir. And it was a really uplifting experience. I don't think I've ever become so attached to an animal that wasn't mine before. I was even allowed to babysit this dog because I formed such a bond with it. It was just, yeah, it was amazing. But the main struggle for me on day 3 was that I managed to get tendinitis in my ankles. Sorry, my cat. Tendinitis in my ankles, which meant that I was really struggling to walk and I had to be really heavily taped up. And again, I was having to take more Nurofen and paracetamol, which really didn't help. So the evening was a real importance to me, as I could just sit down and take all the weight off my ankles, which had become really painful. So the final day, day 4, was possibly the most enjoyable, even though it was the hottest day of the year, and I have never felt heat like this. I was sweating so much that my clothes were just like wet through. It was disgusting. By this point, we'd really bonded as a group and we couldn't wait to complete the expedition together. Whilst the heat was excruciating, we were in so much pain, we actually, at lunchtime, we went to the stream and we like paddled in the stream, and it was so much fun, and it was like really nice to cool down. Due to safety regulations, we had to change part of the route as we were planning to walk across this open moorland, but obviously because it was so hot, and soldiers and Marines had actually died in the Brecon Beacons because of the heat, we had to change our route, so we weren't walking across this moorland. However, even though we changed the route, this didn't stop us from getting burnt. I got really badly burnt across my neck, even though we put sun cream on. And we all suffered from sunstroke because of the heat, which was, it was just ridiculous. But the Peak District in full sunshine is a really stunning place, and the last day was full of laughs without anyone struggling to find motivation to keep going, which was something that it had really plagued us as a team beforehand. And we finally managed to have confidence in our navigation abilities, so a route which previously would have taken us about 11-12 hours to complete took us about 9, so we cut off about 3 hours, which was just absolutely incredible. Moreover, as an absolute history dork, being able to see the dam busters on the last day was possibly one of the biggest highlights of the trip. I went kind of crazy and took about 50 pictures of the dam busters, which is a bit silly, but yeah. And nothing will ever be able to compete with the joy of finishing and getting a Mr. Whippy ice cream from the ice cream van, which was amazing. So I'm now going to discuss the Peak District itself. So the Peak District has various types of grassland which you have to walk on. While some of it is grassy and easy to walk on, other parts of it are more, like other bits of it is moorland and boggy, which is seriously hard to trek across as it's so bumpy, which really doesn't help your ankles as you're having to go up and down, whilst having to cope with all the weight you have on you. Climbing up and down the mountains as well tended to be really rocky, and there was something that we encountered on our penultimate day, and it resulted in me falling over a lot. I mean, I'm naturally clumsy, so I fell over anyway, but this was just ridiculous. I just kept falling over. I definitely did not adjust to the varying forms of moorland that we walked on. As well, the Peak District has lots of different glacial landforms thanks to being affected by the mini ice age. Therefore, we saw tors, ribbon lakes, and quarries as we walked across the mountain. And this was particularly useful when we were map reading, as we could work out where we were thanks to landforms around us. And the steep sides of the quarry meant that we could see if we were on the right ridge or not, which was really helpful. Finally, the Peak District tends to be used for animal farming of sheep and goats, and this is managed through stone walls, which are built in rectangles and squares across the moorland. However, it tends to be rough grazing, with the walls merely stopping the sheep from going completely rogue across the landscape. The landscape was simply stunning in sunshine. In rain and mist, it looked a bit like something out of Lord of the Rings, which really didn't have navigation. But in the sunshine, whilst it was really hot, it was just absolutely stunning, it was actually meant that it was a nice walk. Possibly the most important thing I found in the expedition was teamwork. Your team is what gets you through the expedition, not just because they help you to navigate across the landscape, but because they provide an emotional support network. You rely on them, and I think this is something that we managed really well as a team. We were all emotionally there for each other, we kept the mood light, and we shared responsibilities, and the added weight of group items such as tracheias and the tent. I think we were so lucky in our team as we all just bonded really well together and we all provided different things which helped the group. I was the motivator, Mimi the funny one, Matt the silent but determined one, and Jemima the energetic one. This really helped us to get us through the expedition, and I honestly had the best team. I've done DofE before, and I've really struggled with the team, and it's been a massive letdown. But I can safely say I had the best team. It didn't matter that we didn't know each other beforehand. In fact, I think that actually made it better, as we were thrust into this situation where we had to rely on each other, and we had to see the best parts of each other, and we weren't friends who knew all these issues about each other. Instead, we just went straight into it, and we all just bonded really well, which was really good. So what did I learn? I learned so much on this expedition, mainly about myself. I found out that I have incredible willpower and mental strength. Whilst my body went through a massive physical hardship, there was not one point where I mentally broke down and said, I'm not going to do this, and asked the group to quit and stop. I put my mind to the expedition, and I knew from the beginning that I was going to complete it. I didn't care how long the days were. I didn't care if we were walking for 12, 13, 14 hours. I didn't care how many breaks we had. All I knew was that I was going to complete it no matter what. And I think this mental resilience really helped the rest of the team, as they knew that at any point when they were feeling low, I'd be able to help them and provide support for them to keep going. Whilst I am renowned as being a leader of groups, when I take on group projects, I'm nearly always the leader. DofE really helped me see how I can work in a team, as just a team, like as a, not just being as the leader, but actually cooperating with everyone. Not that I don't cooperate normally, but just actually working as a team, no one being the leader, and just being able to work alongside each other, bounce ideas off each other, decide what you're going to do, really work through situations and decide which is the best route to take. And it really showed me how important it is that you listen to everybody, because we had this one point where we're at this crossroads and only one person wanted to go one way, and the rest of us were like, not sure that's the right way. And we really discussed it. We really looked at it. We were like, okay, why do you think this? Why do you not think that? And we ended up taking that route, and it was the right route. So that just shows how important that is. A lot of people actually assume that if you're physically fit, then you can do DofE and you can complete it easily. I'd actually disagree, and I'd say that whilst physical strength matters, it's so much about the mental strength, and that was something that I really learned. It's something I'm going to take with me, that if you put your mind to something, no matter the odds, no matter the situation, you can do it. As long as you put your mind to it, you can do anything. As long as you're determined, you can stand up in a room of people, and you can deliver as long as you're determined and you can complete that. And yeah, you also need to rely on teams, on your teamwork, on your co-workers. They are so important, as they're what gets you through everything, and they need to be reliable. And you need to be reliable in order to provide a support network for them. So in conclusion, DofE has given me vital life lessons about myself and the power of determination. It allowed me to create friendships with people who I would never have had the opportunity to be friends with before, as they were all a year younger than me. And that through these friendships formed the importance of teamwork. it showed me that the Peak District is a beautiful and interesting place, and that hiking gives you the ability to access landscapes that you would otherwise not be able to see. As I said earlier, I hate hiking, but if I didn't go hiking on DofE, then I would never have seen the landscapes that I have seen, and I've learnt so much from that and from being able to see it. There's nothing quite like standing on the top of a ridge, looking out and seeing the Peak District and sunshine bathed before you. Like, it's amazing. Finally, through all that I've learned and experienced, I would recommend DofE to absolutely everyone. It's definitely not something that everyone can do, but it creates a series of memories that you will treasure forever if you do it. During the expeditions is really tough, don't get me wrong, but afterwards you only ever look on it with fondness. So thank you, and please do DofE.